Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. As Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra approaches the 3-month mark, we ask, how is the Yatra faring? What impact is it having on the people and places it's passing through? And indeed, what is the impact on Rahul Gandhi himself? Joining me is someone who's been with the Yatra from its very start on the 7th of September. He's the President of Swaraj India, perhaps the country's most renowned psephologist and a highly regarded political commentator, Yogendra Yadav. Yogendra Yadav, you've been with Rahul Gandhi on the Bharat Jodo Yatra from the very start. What impact is it making in the areas and states it's passed through?
Let me begin with yesterday, Karan, and then go back. Yesterday, we were in Indore, one of the prominent places in Madhya Pradesh. And I must tell you, that's the first day I felt that the tide is turning. I felt so, maybe for a brief, this is a glimpse. I would not say the tide has turned. I would not say the public opinion in this country has changed or shifted decisively. But what can be said for sure is the following. Number one, the climate of loneliness, of fear, of silence, the spiral, that has been not shattered, but there's a crack in that. 3 months ago, if you wanted to say a word about this government, you knew there's ED waiting for you, there's IT waiting for you, all kinds of cases would be slapped, and everyone, as a double precaution, was just keeping quiet. That has not changed dramatically, but the very fact that you witness thousands of people walking on the street and saying no to this politics of hate has changed that. That, to my mind, is a very significant thing. And in passing, let me say, Karan, that whenever there is a fundamental crisis in any democracy or a nation, the government is of no use, parliament is paralyzed, and very often in most parts of the world, so is the judiciary. And in the last instance, what matters is people on the street. And this is what this Yatra is doing. So that's a change. If you want to look at the political part of the change, I see 2 or 3 things. I look at the Congress workers because Congress is the party that has announced and sponsored this Yatra to begin with. I don't belong to Congress, but Congress is leading this particular Yatra. I see that Congress workers are feeling positive, that after a long time, BJP is reactive, the opposition is proactive. I see Congress leaders have greater self-confidence than I had seen for a long time. An ordinary Congress voter or Congress sympathizer, let us say, is rediscovering the virtues in his own party. Now, I've been limited in what I've said. I'm not saying that BJP voters are shifting as yet. I'm not saying that Modi Bhakts have converted. But in Indore yesterday, I felt that there's some shift in the middle ground that's taking place. It could be an overreading. I'll report to you later about whether I see. But the biggest change that I see, Karan, is in Rahul Gandhi's personal image. That has changed almost dramatically. from what it was presented earlier to what it is now. So that's the balance sheet. And for less than 3 years, not a bad achievement, I thought.
I'll come to the change in Rahul Gandhi's personal image in a moment's time, because I think it's a very important thing for us to discuss. But I'm particularly taken by the fact that you're commenting on yesterday Indore, which is Madhya Pradesh, a BJP ruled state. And your words were, the tide is turning. You clarified it hasn't turned as yet. You won't say there's a decisive shift, but the start of a process has begun. Now, what I'm asking is this. We know from media reports that the Yatra had a very favorable response in South India, where BJP influence is limited. But the last three states you've gone through, Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, and Maharashtra, are BJP ruled. Did you feel the same sense that the tide was turning in all three? In other words, did you feel it in Karnataka and Maharashtra as well before Madhya Pradesh?
Maharashtra was the first place I started noticing it. But, I mean, let's look at the basics. If as an outsider you look at this yatra, the first impression would be this is a Congress roadshow. That's bound to be the case because, 80-90% of the energy that goes into this yatra is a political energy brought in by the Congress party. But what makes this yatra different is that it is Congress plus, that people from civil society, people like Prashant Bhushan, people like Admiral Ramdas, people like Medha Patkar, Aruna Roy is about to join. Yesterday we had Harsh.
We've lost your sound. We've lost your sound. You're back.
Yeah. It is the presence of people like, I was saying, it's the presence of people like Prashant Bhushan, Admiral Ramdas, Medha Patkar, Aruna Roy, Harsh Mandar, Vipin Tripathi, and of course, stars from Bollywood. That is what gives it a certain moral energy, Congress plus. So when I was traveling in Karnataka, I felt, yes, Congress party has put in enormous effort. Things are changing. But remember, by then the yatra had not caught public imagination. It was very recent. It's only in the last 2 or 3 weeks that it is beginning to catch national imagination. So it's not so much about Karnataka as the fact that it was very young. It was very early days yet. In Maharashtra, I felt that the yatra suddenly acquired a new shape. I said it was a stream earlier. In Maharashtra, it became a river. In Maharashtra, for the first time, I noticed a significant chunk of people who were traveling from different parts of the state, who had nothing to do with Congress party, who were also not from people's movement, the ones that we had mobilized. It just came on their own. Something wrong is happening in this country. So I thought, my wife and I thought, we'll come and join. That's the kind of thing you notice. Yesterday in Indore, I thought, on the street, of course, large number of people were mobilized by the Congress. But, those of us who've been traveling over the years, Karan, you've been tracking it over decades, and now a few decades with me as well. You begin to spot, you begin to see, okay, this is a crowd that's mobilized. These are just tamash beans. They've just come to look at Rahul Gandhi. And these are people who've come with hope. These are ordinary people who have nothing to do with this. They've come with hope. That proportion has increased. And that's why, and especially as you mentioned, it is Indore. It is in the heart of Malwa, which is the heartland of BJP, not just the heartland of BJP. As a political historian, I know this is where Jansangh started. So this is really the heartland of Jansangh BJP politics that we are looking at. If there you begin to see that shift, that I thought is what I identified as the tide is turning. So I think we have days, we'll have Rajasthan as well, we'll get to see. But I now smell something, it shift in public opinion to say, हाँ, कुछ कर रहे हैं, Modi ji ज़्यादा कर रहे थे, कुछ तो करने की ज़रूरत थी. So that's coming back. And that's a very, very big news for the country.
Now, you say that it was in Maharashtra where you first sensed that a stream was becoming a river. That's a very picturesque way of describing it. Maharashtra is also where Rahul Gandhi made his comments about Savarkar. Many politicians, including several of his allies and undoubtedly some of his own party, had reservations and concerns about what he said. How did those comments about Savarkar go down with the people of Maharashtra?
Judge of that. And being in the Yatra, you don't actually get a sense of how people in Pune, Mumbai, Nagpur may have been looking at it. So there's split opinion. But Karan, you know Rahul. The thing about him is that he's straightforward. He says what he feels. And when it comes to RSS, when it comes to BJP's politics of hatred, he feels about it from his guts, not just from his mind, not just from his lips. He deeply feels that this is not the India that I want. This is not our India. So he's spoken. I was not surprised because he's been speaking that again and again. And I think, Karan, there are pluses and minuses of everything that you do in politics. But isn't it time someone stood up in public and spoke about these things? Isn't it time someone stood up and said, how can the home minister of this country say we taught them a lesson in 2002 at a time when hundreds if not thousands were massacred, and the home minister of the country says we taught them a lesson? Isn't it time someone stood up in public, regardless of whether it's politic or diplomatic or undiplomatic, it's smart or less than smart? Someone has the courage to stand up and say it. I would applaud it, whether it's politically smart or not so smart. Someone could say that if you wanted to attack Savarkar, you should have attacked his vision of India. That probably would have been a smarter thing. But these things don't convey to the people. This whole mystique of the weed that has been built up needs to be busted. Someone has done it. Maybe it's impolitic. But in the last instance, if someone is seen to be saying the right thing, someone is seen to be speaking from his heart, from his guts, in the last instance, people take it seriously and start believing it.
Now, tell me about security. How much of a concern is it? I noticed that on Saturday, that's just 48 hours ago, Neerja Chaudhary, writing in the Indian Express, said, and I'm quoting her, Rahul is cordoned off by a rope held by a string of policemen to prevent people entering the walking enclosure. She says media persons are not allowed near Rahul, and she adds, it's not as if those waiting by the wayside get a chance to exchange a word with him or he with them. Is that also your understanding of how security is cocooning Rahul in the middle of the crowd, or is that not the case?
I read Neerja's piece, and of course, she's factually correct. There is a rope, there is a cordon. I mean, these are elementary security precautions. These are not days of Chandrasekhar's Bharat Yatra, when a national leader is walking and people are just coming to say hello, why don't you stop for a cup of tea, etc. Those days unfortunately are gone in our politics. After 84, after Mr. Gandhi's assassination, and we have to take into account the fact that this family has seen 2 assassinations, not 1. So given those kinds of security precautions, security concerns, the striking thing is that he's actually walking. The striking thing is not that there is a rope around him. Of course, there's a rope around him. But Karan, in this country, all these security precautions actually amount to nothing. And I must say, someone who's faced 2 assassinations in his life, in his family, for that person to take the risk of plain walking, and every time I look at a flyover,
we've lost you. We've lost you. We've lost you.
Yeah, let me come again. Can you hear me now?
I can indeed, yes.
Yeah, sorry. Anytime I look at a flyover, anytime I look at a narrow road, I shudder, Karan. Anything can happen. Frankly, every day this yatra passes through at least 5 or 7 spots where anyone can do anything if they are determined. Yet, I don't see that on Rahul's face. He's walking. So yes, there are these precautions. And of course, when it's not merely the fact that the security has cordoned him, the fact is that hundreds and thousands of people are walking around him. When hundreds and thousands of people are walking with you, someone has to protect it. Even if I'm walking and if hundreds of people are with me, my colleagues give me a manual cordon, something like this has to be done. It is true that if you decide to just walk and shake hands with Rahul, that doesn't happen. But the fact is that every who are walking like this, who are just waving to him, who are holding a banner or something, he calls them in, he has interactions with them. So all the pictures that you see of a young girl walking with him, an old woman walking with him, these are not stage managed. These are people actually from the crowd. He simply picks and says, unko bula lijiye, unko aane dijiye, and things of that kind. Yes, it is true that everyone cannot walk with him. If that were to happen, the walk wouldn't happen at all. The fact is, it's not a Chandrasekhar Yatra where people are just quietly walking from village to village. This is a different age, different kind of Yatra. And I'm surprised that so many people him. Ideally, you would want it to be even more, but then I'm no security expert, so I should not assess it on their behalf.
Now, you've been with Rahul. Let's talk about him and the impact he's making. To begin with, what are his speeches about? What are the issues he raises?
If you look at the common thread in all the speeches, and he speaks only once a day. I wish he were to speak more often, but then again, security issues and so on. He speaks only once a day. Throughout the day, he meets people on the Yatra. During the break, as we have now, right now, this is the break time for the Yatra. He would be meeting delegations of local farmers or local bunkar, whatever. Some group would come and meet him, talk about the local issues. In the evening, he speaks. And if you were to take the LCM, the common thread in the speech, it is this, that this country faces serious issues. He invariably talks about unemployment and how it is hurting the youth. He talks about inflation. He also talks about the rising inequality in this country, that while 97% of the people lost their income and wealth during COVID, one or two families shoot up. So he talks about economic inequality. And he says, in order to cover it up, Hindu-Muslim divide, nafrat, hatred is being spread in this country. The hatred doesn't belong to us. This is a diverse country. This is our tradition, and hatred shall be defeated. He also says at the heart, at the root of hatred is fear. We have to remove fear so that we stop hatred. We have to think of a better India. This is the sum and substance of much of his speech, almost every day. To me, the important thing is that the real Hindu-Muslim unity Yatra, which is what it is not. He also incidentally speaks about the democratic institutions and what is being done to them. BJP would want it to focus only on the Hindu-Muslim question, and I'm glad he's not focusing only on that the Yatra ends up foregrounding issues, economic issues of distress of people, which need to be foregrounded. And I'm very glad, I'm actually almost surprised that at least a leader from a mainstream party has the guts to stand up and speak about Adani and Ambani and what they are doing to this country's politics. He often talks about the media as well, and how media has been controlled. And he says, well, when everything is being silenced, the only thing left for us is to come on the street and walk with the people. That's the sum and substance of what he says.
Now, Neeta Chaudhary in that article in the Express says, Rahul's speeches don't set the house on fire, but she adds, he's established a rapport and a connect with people because they are both amazed and delighted that someone like him has walked to meet them. That act of walking through the country to meet the people has really struck a chord, she says.
She's absolutely right. His speeches do not set the house on fire. No one has accused him of great oratory so far. But Karan, please do remember that this country actually has never privileged oratory. Some of the greatest leaders of this country have never been orators. Mahatma Gandhi was not just not a great orator, he was a very poor public speaker. If you look at Chaudhary Charan Singh, if you look at VP Singh, they were not, it's not their speech which actually mattered. Unlike the West, oratory does not make great leaders in this country. You communicate before you speak. This is what, I mean, I'm not comparing Rahul Gandhi with Mahatma Gandhi. That's a comparison I would never make. But just in oratory, Mahatma Gandhi communicated before he spoke. And the act of Padyatra is precisely this. It speaks to people without your opening your mouth. You are walking. Padayatra in this country still has a deep cultural resonance. And you are able to speak, as Nirja points out. The fact that he is walking to listen to them, of course, he doesn't get to listen to everyone, but that he has come to listen to their woes, to any act of oratory.
Now, I gather this is actually quite a vigorous walk. This is not a slow, gentle stroll. Rahul Gandhi is setting a very brisk pace. Am I right?
Absolutely. And I mean, I really wish he were not to do so, because this is such a brisk. I mean, I've done Padyatras all my life. I mean, in the last 10 years, I've done many Padyatras. We end up doing about 18 kilometers. So my usual limit is no more than 18 kilometers. And you walk slowly. Rahul walks briskly, and as a result of his pace, the entire yatra has that pace. So people like us, we walk at least half a kilometers ahead of him, because when he's walking, it's a crowd of a few hundred or a few thousand. So it's like a juggernaut which is coming with his speed. So we keep at least half a kilometer, if not 1 kilometer. Also, Congress Seva Dal people, we keep ahead, so as to not be crushed by this juggernaut which is coming behind us. So yes, that is indeed an issue that we need to handle. It is very fast. As a result, it's in about, we do, for example, this morning we did 13.5 kilometers. And I guess we took just 3 hours for that, which is very fast for a Padayatra. But it's energizing. It's good, especially in the early morning cold. It's good to walk fast.
Now tell me, how has the yatra changed Rahul? I know that he has a pretty bushy beard and therefore his appearance has changed considerably. But what are the deeper, more fundamental changes in the person, in the politician that you're beginning to spot?
Yeah, I mean, I have very little comments on his beard and so on. I have no impression of those things. About the person, I mean, it so happens, as you know, I mean, I've known him for 15 years. And I can't say I've known him intimately. I can't say I'm friends with him, but I've spoken to him at length. About 10 years, 15 years ago, I used to speak to him at length, and now I've spoken to him at length. I think the biggest change is not in him, but in his public perception. I wouldn't say the person has dramatically changed. The person that I have known over the years is a straightforward person. He's a very, I mean, one thing that he doesn't do is to play games with you. Ye kaha, wo kaha, kahin pe nigahein, kahin pe nishana, nothing of that sort. He's a very straightforward person. He's a very serious person. Reads if you want him to read something, engages in a serious discussion if you want him to. And his, in terms of his values, secularism, social justice, and economic equality, these three things are really in his heart. I mean, that's something I'd known 15 years ago. That's what I know today. What has changed, Karan, above all, is the public perception. Of course, I've also known him to be a slightly reserved person. A bit, I wouldn't say introvert, but a slightly reserved person. What has changed is the public perception. There was a huge industry that painted him in a certain color. The public perception that was built was someone who's arrogant, someone who's inaccessible, someone who's, Ayash Hindi mein kehte hain na, abroad, luxury, bade baap ka beta, and someone who's non-serious, not serious about politics. This image used to surprise and pain me, even when I was a bitter critic of Congress, and I've written very harsh things about Congress. Even in that, I had said Rahul Gandhi is more sincere than any politician I've met, and he's more intelligent than people think he is. So it used to surprise me. Now, what has happened now is that people have seen all these three elements to be completely untrue. The impression was that this man is so used to living in VIP luxury culture that he won't be able to walk for 3 or 4 days. When the walk started, some of my friends alerted me, योगेन जी, आप सड़क पे रह जाएंगे और वो तो हवाई जहाज लेके निकल जाएगा. आप क्या कर रहे हो? So one, I think, is established that yes, he can endure. I mean, it's not just about the physical fact of walking, but keeping a resolve. He said this is a tapasya, and he's been doing it. So that one myth which has been shattered in public eyes. Second, the idea that he was inaccessible, arrogant, wouldn't speak to ordinary people, and all kinds of stories, speaks to dogs rather than human beings, and so on and so forth. Now you see him speaking, connecting, relating to people, unknown people, hugging them, walking with them. And one thing I can tell you, Karan, come and watch it. These are not stage managed. I can vouch for it. None of these things are stage managed. It's not a 6-camera shoot when you go to touch your mother's feet. No, it's not that. It's actually happening spontaneously. It's happening on the ground.
Okay.
And so this is the second thing which goes off. That is inaccessible. Danta se baat nahi karta. Third is about his being non-serious. Now, every day, delegations of people are meeting him. 3 days ago, someone mentioned to him that there is, that lung disease that happens when you inhale this pollution, sclerosis. Now, I'm forgetting the name. He said, "Can I meet some of those victims?" They came yesterday. He spent 25 minutes with them, understanding from the victims. By now, dozens of delegations have met him, hundreds of individuals have met him. And not one person has said to me, because I meet many of them after that, not one person has said to me, he was not serious, he was not engaged, we were not heard, that he was not, attentive to what self-optimism has come out. This, to my mind, the country discovering that Rahul Gandhi is serious, sincere, and purposeful is what is changing the public impression. What is changing in him is a harder thing to say, because as I said, I'm not that kind of a yar or that kind, someone who knows him intimately. But I do see a significant change in his self-confidence, his body language, much more self-assurance. When you live in Delhi, Tughlaq Lane, these things tend to make you a different person. Walking on the street and actually meeting people, that gives you a certain kind of self-assurance with no amount of opinion polls or no amount of election results or no amount of adulation or people surrounding you saying nice things to you can do. That change is also something I see.
A very quick question. You began this answer by saying the biggest change is in the public perception of Rahul. I'm going to deliberately phrase this as I do now. Does this mean that the man they called Pappu is becoming prime ministerial?
I don't know as yet, but certainly the Pappu image is shattered. For ordinary people, someone met me the other day and said, "Acha bhai, Rahul Gandhi और कुछ भी है, he's a BJP supporter, पर यार Rahul Gandhi ने full-time politics शुरू कर दी है." Others are saying, "भाई कुछ तो है." So people are beginning to that Pappu part, which was of course an industry. The media industry was invested into creating that Pappu image. That Pappu image is washed. Whether it has become the prime ministerial image is something which wouldn't happen only during the Yatra, Karan. Obviously, people would wish to watch him after the Yatra. Does he stay with these things? Is he tenacious? What happens after the Yatra? All that would go into it. People like me are interested in this question, not because it's Rahul Gandhi, not because it's Congress. It's not my business to promote anyone's personality or leadership. And all this business of kaun banega Pradhan Mantri within the opposition is actually something that doesn't interest me one bit. For me, the interesting part is this, that Rahul's Pappu image was one of the strongest assets in Mr. Modi's cabinet. And as that Pappu image gets shattered, one of the biggest strengths that Mr. Modi has drawn upon is reduced. That is what interests me. I was speaking to somebody, someone came to me, sat by me, देखिए, वैसे मैं मोदी जी का भक्त हूँ, लेकिन आप टीवी पे अच्छा बोलते हैं. I said, all right, sit down. And then I asked him, in the course of conversation, I turned to him and said, मोदी जी झूठ बोलते हैं. He said, हाँ, वो तो बोलते हैं. I said, फिर आप भक्त क्यों हैं? This was 4 years ago. He said, तो क्या मैं पप्पू को वोट दे दूं? This was Modi ji's this has been one of his biggest strengths, that no one else can be even looked at. Who else is the alternative? As soon as that Pappu image gets shattered, people will begin to acknowledge those things about Mr. Modi that they know, afraid of acknowledging even to themselves, let alone to others. And that is good news for this country, Karan.
We're going to have to take a quick break there, Yogendra. I want to come back and move the focus of our discussion away from the Yatra, Rahul, and the change in Rahul's image to the big question, which you would understand as a psephologist. Will the excitement, the enthusiasm, and the crowds translate into votes? Is it a mistake that the Yatra is avoiding Gujarat and Bihar and only spending limited time in UP? And finally, is there a danger that the Yatra that's catching the imagination today may not produce the results when state elections happen next year in Karnataka, Madhya Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, and Rajasthan? And therefore, by the end of December 2023, a year from now, a Yatra that seems so successful and hopeful today might appear like a wasted exercise. All of those are issues I shall take up in a minute's time after this break. Welcome back to a special interview with Yogendra Yadav on Rahul Gandhi's Bharat Jodo Yatra. Mr. Yadav has been with Rahul Gandhi from the very start of the Yatra on the 7th of September. Yogendra Yadav, you've talked about the enthusiasm of the crowds, the hundreds of thousands who are there with Rahul and the Yatra every single day. What are the chances that this curiosity or this enthusiasm will actually convert into votes when it counts? What's the certainty of that?
There is no certainty. And let me begin by saying, frankly, you can do a great yatra and do miserably in elections. Both these things can go together. So anyone who thinks that the yatra will automatically result in Congress victory or anything of this sort must be living in some strange paradise. That's certainly not the case. What the Yatra can do. Remember, Karan, what was the overall mood of the country 3 months ago? We had television shows about whether 2024 was a done deal already. Everyone, shoulders, at least in the opposition camp, shoulders were drooping. Are yaar, ab to kuch nahi ho sakta after Uttar Pradesh election, certainly. So, what I expect from the Yatra, speaking for myself, if the Yatra breaks that spell of silence, gives people the courage to speak, and their sense of loneliness is broken, I'm satisfied the Yatra is successful as far as I'm concerned. I do understand that for Congress people, colleagues, this may not be sufficient. And yes, the entire country is looking to 2024 anxiously. We do want its result to be in a certain way. From that point of view, I would say only this much. The Yatra can do only one thing. It cannot do everything. The Yatra can bring about a narrative shift, which is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for defeating the BJP. And by narrative shift, I mean this. For such a long period, almost for the last 6-7 years, BJP has enjoyed narrative dominance. And this is not merely because BJP has money, they have media. Of course, they have all these things. They have dirty tricks department, they have their IT cell. But all this derives force from the fact that BJP has been able to come up with communication which connects to the people. BJP has been able to present itself, and Mr. Modi has been able to present himself as the only savior of the country, the party and the leader in charge of ensuring that the nation is safe and fine. That needed to be punctured. Unless you do that, nothing else works. Even if the Congress or other opposition parties were to have exactly the same organizational capacity, strength, money, and so on as the BJP, even then they would not be able to take on the BJP because of this narrative dominance, a certain ideological hegemony that BJP enjoys. What this yatra is beginning to do, and I hope by the end of this yatra, something of that kind can be accomplished, is that it's puncturing that narrative. It is puncturing that communication. It is beginning to put an or, and not merely by negating it, but by foregrounding other issues which need to be foregrounded, issues of economy, issues of health, issues of democracy, issues even of the Sino-Indian border. So I expect, even looking at it as my old style psephologist, I expect if this yatra accomplishes that narrative shift, the yatra has done its job. After that, parties have to do their job. I mean, strangely, this yatra would benefit even other political parties who are not aligned with Congress. I mean, it can end up supporting, helping the Samajwadi Party. It can end up helping Mamata Banerjee as well, because once this complete narrative hegemony, this control over communication, over images, over legitimacy, once that is punctured, then everyone benefits from that. Then it is down to organizational work. So if anyone thinks that the job of defeating the BJP is over with the yatra, nothing can be more foolish than that. The job begins after the yatra. Because after that, once this necessary thing is done, then you have to do other things that the BJP does very well. I mean, after all, BJP's electoral victories are also a function of organizational smartness, a function of paying enormous attention to the task of winning elections, putting in a very systematic machine. I have no hesitation in saying that BJP today could be the the most efficient election machine that I can see all around, not just in India, but even outside. So you have to develop at least, if not that kind of machine, you have to develop something of that kind. Karan, I keep saying that the difference between the manner in which BJP cracks elections and the manner in which other opposition parties do it is similar to how the young boys and girls these days crack examinations, class 10 or IIT examination. You know, they go to Kota, they are doing this coaching, 1.5 mark question would come there, 5 mark question there, and let's try it 400 times. Compared to the times when Karan, you and I, if I can place us in the same generation, when we used to do our examination, we would just read the textbook and we'd go and do examination. That is the kind of difference that we have with BJP, with others. So opposition parties, including the Congress, would have to really work hard on getting all that right. They have a year to do that after the yatra. That is not a very long time if you want to take on a party like the BJP. But I would say, reiterate, the task begins there. And unless you do all this, a great yatra may end up bringing no electoral rewards for the Congress or for other opposition parties. So it's a huge task that awaits all of us.
In which case, let me ask you this. Was it a mistake for the Yatra to avoid Gujarat and Bihar and to spend very limited time in UP?
I don't think that's a mistake, at least as far as the Gujarat is concerned. If someone had asked me, I mean, not that I made that schedule or had any hand in that, but if someone had asked me, I would have said, don't begin with Gujarat, because for, given the overall situation from which the Congress started it, given the kind of advantage BJP has enjoyed in Gujarat for a long time, I would not want to tie the impact for the yatra to be assessed based on the Gujarat election outcome. That would have been the not a very smart thing to do, at least in the case of Gujarat. The other thing I wanted to underline, because there's been enormous discussion about the yatra route, I've always asked people to do something very similar, simple. Kashmir to Kanyakumari or Kanyakumari to Kashmir is not a slogan that Rahul Gandhi has invented. Ever since we were children, we've heard this: Kanyakumari se Kashmir tak. Now, if you draw a straight line on the map from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, the route that you get is roughly the route that this yatra is taking. Unfortunately, from Kanyakumari to Kashmir, Bihar doesn't fall. Uttar Pradesh, I mean, you can touch it or you can decide not to touch it. Gujarat doesn't fall on the route. And for me, the important thing, Karan, is any yatra is not about the geographies where it travels. You could say the yatra has traveled in Maharashtra, but ask people in Maharashtra, they said, "Arey, Western Maharashtra nahi gaye, Konkan nahi gaye, Bombay nahi gaye, kya Maharashtra hua? It's only Vidarbha and Marathwada." So it's not geography. What we forget is Gandhiji's great Dandi march that the entire country celebrates. It began in Gujarat and ended in Gujarat. It changed the country. A yatra like this is essentially, in the last instance, not about geographies. It is about mental topography. It's about the mindscape, not about the landscape. That is what it seeks to do. And in that case, what the yatra is doing, I don't think the yatra's route was planned in a particular political way. People read all kinds of meanings. Acha, is jile mein nahi gayi, us jile mein gayi. I think it was largely determined by Mr. Google. That is what guided their route. To my mind, therefore, geography is not all that important. What this yatra is doing to speak to the nation is what really matters.
Tell me this. If the hard work that has to be done to get the Congress Party organization working effectively doesn't happen, and you and I know that for 8 years it hasn't happened. The Congress organization has been in a form of desuetude since 2014. If it doesn't happen and Congress does poorly next year in elections in Karnataka, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, and Chhattisgarh, then by December 2023, will the yatra, which feels such a moment of hope today, look like a wasted exercise?
For people like me, Karan, it won't be wasted at all because those of us, and I speak not just for myself, 150 civil society organizations, as these are called, 150 people's movement, people's organizations, those who have nothing to do with Congress, and also smaller alternative political parties. We all came together, decided to support Congress, not because we wanted to uplift the Congress's electoral prospects. We clearly said we are not supporting the party, we're not supporting a leader. As a one-time effort, we are supporting this yatra because this yatra changes, is a intervention in a national crisis. So for me, the yatra would be successful irrespective of its electoral outcome. Not that I'm indifferent to outcomes, not that the country should be indifferent to outcomes. Yes, the fact is that Congress and other opposition parties would need to put in a lot of hard work. In Uttar Pradesh, is Samajwadi Party putting the kind of hard work that they need to put in now to recover the ground that they lost in Vidhan Sabha? That's a question. It's a question that should be posed to the Congress leaders. I'm sure they are concerned. I'm sure they are attentive to it. But yes, as I said right in the beginning of this section, you can do a great yatra and lose the elections badly at the same time. So converting this energy is the real thing. And converting the energy is not merely the task for Congress party. I think we need the conversion of the energy and positivity and narrative shift brought out by this yatra, by Congress, by other political parties, which would also benefit from the narrative shift if it happens the way. And we need conversion of energy in the civil society sector. Hundreds of people's movements and organizations who have been critical of the Congress, who have taken issues with Congress on the ground, have struggled and will probably struggle against Congress regimes in future as well. They have come this time to support this yatra. Now, that's an extraordinary energy, and Karan, in many ways, an energy which is stronger than the energy is generated by political parties. Because in the case of political parties, people suspect that, all right, this is their self-interest. They are here because they want ticket, because they want to win, because they want to become an MP or something. But when people's movement support, people say, okay, that's serious. You have no interest in, winning this election, but you are still supporting. That's a vast energy. And I dare say that the energy to take on BJP, RSS, and their politics of hatred predominantly lies outside mainstream political parties today. That energy needs to be synergized, that energy needs to be brought together, that energy needs to be channelized in a way that changes the national mood before the 2024 election. So that responsibility falls on people like me, people like us, all of us who have been involved in civil society organizations.
Okay.
So yes, as I said, the real work begins after the yatra. जो एक दीवार थी उस दीवार में यात्रा ने एक खिड़की खोल दी है, but that's not the real job. उसके बाद बहुत कुछ करना है. We've just begun to knock at the door. The door hasn't opened yet, and we need to be very conscious of that fact.
You're right. You're knocking on the door hasn't opened, but I'll end by pointing out two big things that have begun. Only begun, maybe, but one, the narrative in the country of public discourse is starting to change. Issues that weren't highlighted earlier are now being brought up and discussed. And secondly, the belief that Modi is the only savior of the country is being challenged. It hasn't been decimated, but it's being challenged. And the other big change, and I'm quoting you, is that the Pappu image is shattered. Rahul Gandhi may not have become prime ministerial, but the belief that he was Pappu and you can't vote for Pappu is now history. And I presume this also means that whenever in future Rahul Gandhi has to face up 1-to-1 against Modi, it will be less uneven and more equal. I thank you for putting that message across because it's conveyed, I think, an impression of the Yatra and what it's achieving in far more concrete and real terms than any other description I've read in the newspapers or seen in television. I thank you for having brought home to the audience the significance of the Yatra. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Karan. Thank you very much. Because what is at stake is not merely one election, one government. What is at stake is the heritage of our freedom struggle. What is at stake is our civilization. That's why people like me are here. I'm glad what I said made some sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy walking.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.